What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thanks so much for joining me today. Let's start quickly with some injury updates. We didn't get a ton out of Matt LaFleur on any sort of injury updates. He didn't really go into detail on Jair or really anything else. He didn't seem to want to talk about it too much, but it does seem by all indications and reports that Jair did avoid any serious injury. Now, whether that means he could still go on IR and miss 4 to 5 weeks, whether that means he could be just missing maybe 1 or 2 weeks, or whether that means he could be ready to go this week, still very much remains to be seen. But it certainly seems like the early indications are that it is not serious, which I would think would mean at least not season ending, and that he would be back at some point. Again, after the game, it sounded like he was in good spirits, and I think the hope is that he's going to be back sooner rather than later. But again, we didn't get too much from Matt LaFleur, but overall, good reports so far. Meanwhile, on the Patriots side of things, Mac Jones is going to miss at least some period of time. There seems to be some discrepancy if it's going to be more of a 4-week thing or a 6 to 8 week thing. Doesn't really matter from a Packers standpoint, other than the fact that it's going to, at minimum, be at least a 1-week thing, which is the only thing that matters in Packerland. And the Patriots will be without Mac Jones for this game, which leaves Bailey Zapp as well as Brian Hoyer. Hoyer, the likely starter. And because of that, the Packers open up as 9.5-point favorites. It's not like the Patriots have exactly, put a bunch of fear in opponents so far already this season. Certainly a competent team when Mac Jones is at quarterback, and certainly a team that is capable of beating just about anyone on their best day. But with Brian Hoyer at quarterback, that changes things exponentially. And certainly Vegas seems to feel the same way, again, opening the Packers at 9.5-point favorites. All right, so that does it for sort of news and notes from Monday. Of course, it is Tuesday, so we're going to go into our upon further review, or more importantly, our film review. If you're new to this, I've had the opportunity to obviously watch the game, rewatch the game on the TV copy, and then actually go through on the all 22 and watch every player on every play, giving them grades. So I'll go through my highest graded players, my lowest graded players, some interesting players and how they graded out, and then some other film notes as well. So let's start with our top 3 players on offense. This is not hyperbole. This is not, I don't even know how to define it, but this is not a charity case. This is not doing this to be a good story. Number 1 on my offensive grades this week, David Bakhtiari, plus 0.4. Not a huge grade. And quite frankly, not a good David Bakhtiari grade on like a really good day is like 1.5, 1.8, sometimes even 2.0. Like when he's on his game, he's just an absolute machine. But remember, he only played basically half of this game, and he still ended up my highest graded player in this game. I cannot tell you how much joy that I got being able to grade David Bakhtiari once again. The dude is just an absolute machine. Reminder here, he actually graded as a plus 0.8 in his minimum snaps in Detroit last year, just as a side there, just to show you what he's capable of. Even when he's basically fighting knee injuries and hasn't played in forever, this is just who the guy is. I get that the hyperbole scale for how much the Packers have missed David Bakhtiari is through the roof. I don't know if they end up beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with David Bakhtiari. I don't know if they end up beating the San Francisco 49ers with David Bakhtiari. Who knows if they have a Super Bowl or 2 Super Bowls with David Bakhtiari? I don't know. All I can tell you is that however much you think this guy matters to this football team, it's probably more. I can't begin to tell you how impressive of a player he is to watch every single time I get the opportunity to watch him on the All-22. If you have never watched a David Bakhtiari game, especially in his prime, I recommend doing so. Find a way to get some film and just go and grind it out, because he is a special, unique player who has a process that is extremely repeatable, and he can do over and over and just shuts down opposing defensive linemen, but is also really good in the running game. He is such a blend of pass protector and run blocker, and he just really makes the game look easy. And I missed watching that, and it was a joy to watch it once again. Was this a perfect game from David Bakhtiari? It wasn't. But man, if you had told me that this guy basically didn't play in 2 years and was coming in, every other series and working off some rust, you just don't see this. A night and day difference even from Elton Jenkins from what we saw really last week and this week. More on that in just a moment. But where we saw some legitimate rust from Elton Jenkins. Now, clearly Jenkins basically playing a brand new position at right tackle as well. So there is going to be a learning curve there for Jenkins. But man, it was like, I know it's old and cliche, but it was like riding a bike for Bakhtiari. He just gets back out there and just does his thing. And this is not like, he's going against some powder puff, football team. This is going up against guys like Shaq Barrett and first round pick Joe Tryon. Like, these are good football players. And he just held up and held his own and did everything he could to help this Packers team win, even in minimum snaps. And like I said, I didn't grade him extra because it's a great story. I didn't grade him any differently than I would have graded him in any other game. And like I said, to be fair, a plus 0.4 normally isn't going to grade top overall in the offense. And a plus 0.4 is like a okay David Bakhtiari game, but still ended up as my number one offensive rated player in this game. And just, again, freaking David Bakhtiari, man. So great to have him back. Hopefully he can play full games sooner rather than later and make it through the remainder of the season with no injury issues, because he is such a difference maker on this Packers offensive line. Second up, not going to believe me, let's just get to it first. Royce Newman, plus 0.35, number 2 on my list. I thought this was a really nice game from Royce Newman. Now, friend of the show, obviously our Friday guest, Mike Wall, said that he didn't see it the same way when I tweeted out that I thought Royce Newman had a good game in this game. Pro Football Focus had a solid grade on Royce Newman as well. So this is what's fun about football, right? Like, even those who watched the film and go into great detail on it, myself, Pro Football Focus, Mike Wall, Ben Fennell's obviously another one of those. It's not always going to be a consensus. Everyone's going to sometimes see things a little bit of a different way, which is why I will always tell you very, forthcoming, like, my grade's not the be-all end-all. It's not going to always be perfect. Now, I love my process. I love how I go about doing this. I trust it. When I give these grades to you, I say it with conviction because I put a lot of time, effort, and energy in reviewing everything into these. But again, it's not always going to be perfect. There's going to be a, room for some error. And I think this is, again, what makes it fun is these are great conversations to have. And I'm excited to talk about Royce Newman with Mike Wall on Friday, or, for Friday's episode. But like I said, PFF had a good grade on him. I had a good grade on him, plus 0.35. Wasn't anything spectacular. Like, that's not that great of a grade. That's like slightly above average. But for Royce, that's been a major improvement. His first 2 games were not good. Obviously at right tackle, just did not fit that spot in week 1, especially going against Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. In week 2, I thought he looked a little bit better at right guard, but you could tell he was also a little bit rusty playing right guard. I thought he settled in nicely to this game, especially, having to go at times against guys like Vita Vea. Not an easy matchup, and I thought he held up overall well. Was it an all-star performance? No, but a massive improvement for Royce Newman. And again, I had him as my second highest graded offensive player total with a plus 0.35. And then number 3 was Alan Lazard with a plus 0.3 grade. I thought the catch from, Aaron Rodgers late in the game, he had the touchdown reception. He had a couple of just vicious, beautiful blocks in the pass game and in the run game. Like, he just played a really sound overall game. I would like to see him separate a little bit better. That's going to be something he has to continue to improve upon. But overall, really liked this performance from Alan Lazard as well. So top 3, David Bakhtiari, Royce Newman, and Alan Lazard. It is bizarro world because the bottom 3 are 3 names that you would normally never expect to be on the bottom 3. My lowest graded player for the second straight week was Elton Jenkins. And last week, I think it was like negative 1.0 grade, lowest graded player on offense. And it was understandable, right? The guy's coming back from an ACL. It's his first game back. He's playing a new position. It's going to take some time, all of those things. And all those things I just mentioned still apply to this week. Just because he played last week, he's still working off some of the rust. He's still getting used to a new position. He's going against a very tough Tampa Bay team. Saw a lot of Shaq Barrett. Like, this is going to be a learning curve for Elton Jenkins. But this was the first time, that I'm watching him at right tackle and being like, are we totally sure that this is the best thing for Elton is to be at right tackle? Now, the issue here is that Green Bay doesn't have another real option, right? You could make the argument as time goes on, and Matt LaFleur sort of indicated in his press conference that there's a lot of conversation about, trying to get the best 5 guys on the offensive line out on the field and how they could do that. Is there a world where Yash could play right tackle with Bakhtiari at left, Myers at center, John Runyan Jr. at left, and Elton Jenkins at right guard? Maybe. Maybe you put Bach and Jenkins back next to each other, where both of them were phenomenal. With Myers at center, you move John Runyan Jr. to right guard, and then you put Yash at right tackle. I don't know. I know that they've mentioned in the past that, Yash hasn't really taken to right tackle all that well, and that he just seems to fit better on the left side. That basically makes him a left tackle only, which is an issue because Bakhtiari is a left tackle only. And Elton Jenkins has really struggled in his first 2 weeks at right tackle. Now, all that being said, I think Elton's going to be just fine at right tackle. I think he's going to settle into that position like he has at every other position, along the offensive line throughout the course of his entire career. And I'm excited to see how he continues to improve at that position. So I think that'll ultimately be fine. But second week in a row, grading as the lowest offensive player, that gives me a little bit more pause to say, like, okay, we're going to have to kind of take a wait and see approach to see if this is something that, he can get a little bit more acclimated to. But I thought he had a tough game, and Mike Wall talked about him, kind of oversetting a little bit and allowing for inside moves. We saw it on a couple different occasions. Shaq beat him inside on a move. They got a sort of a game on him where they were, twisting and they got inside of him. So they're just things that he's going to have to work on at that position, and not what we're accustomed to seeing from Elton Jenkins. But certainly, it goes without saying, willing to give Elton Jenkins some accident forgiveness in his first 2 games back. Number 2, Aaron Jones, negative 0.6 grade. Clearly, this was mostly due to the fumble at the 1-yard line. Anytime you fumble, it's going to be a big negative play, but when you do it at the 1-yard line and take points off the board in a super tight game, just really hard to overcome that. I actually thought outside of that, Jones had a pretty nice game, but that's a really bad fumble at a really bad time that, quite frankly, could have cost them the game. It didn't, and his teammates picked him up, and they were able to get the ball back relatively quickly after that turnover, but still something that can't happen, and sort of the grade reflects that. Number 3, sort of same thing for Aaron Rodgers, negative 0.55 grade. He made some really nice throws. The Allen Lazard throw was an absolute beauty. I thought he made a couple of really nice reads. A couple of those throws to Romeo Dobbs were just beyond phenomenal. The Cobb play where he pumps and Devin White bites and then Cobb continues and he hits a really tight window throw. Some really good stuff in this game. But he also missed some stuff. He had a really bad interception to Logan Ryan where he was trying to go to Robert Tonyan, but Tonyan really was never open on the play. And just some uncharacteristic mistakes. And this has sort of been 3 games now for Aaron Rodgers where he has not played up to his level. I get that he's getting accustomed to new wide receivers. He's getting accustomed to an offensive line that's been changing basically weekly. So again, some accident forgiveness here for Rodgers too, but sort of uncharacteristic to say the least. And there were a couple times where he had some run pass decisions where it just didn't go in his favor. Tough to say if that's on him or if, he's just kind of executing the play. But I thought there were some opportunities to hit some throws and hit some reads in this game that just didn't come up the way that you would have expected it to with Rodgers at quarterback. He's going to be totally fine, but it's just 3 rather uninspiring performances from QB1 through the first 3 weeks. I think in some capacity, like I've said in the past, if you can go 2-1 and, Rodgers hasn't been playing anywhere near his best football, that's probably a pretty good sign as things continue to get, will probably get better for the back-to-back reigning MVP. All right, top 3 on defense. Kenny Clark has been an absolute man on a mission. 3 beautiful grades through 3 games so far. He is by far and away my highest graded player on the team through 3 weeks, and he looks absolutely unblockable through the vast majority of the game. He is disruptive. He is holding up against double teams. He is, if you're single teaming him or if you're one-on-one blocking him in the run game, he is going to push you into the backfield and disrupt the play. He is throwing players to the side. He is getting pressures at a ridiculous rate. As I talked about, you basically have Aaron Donald as your tier 1 defensive tackle. He's a god at the position, basically. And then after that, you've got guys like Chris Jones and Grady Jarrett and Kenny Clark, and there's certainly a few other ones as well. But Kenny Clark is right there in that next tier, and he very much might be on the top of that next tier the way that he is playing right now. Another phenomenal game from Kenny Clark. Number 2 is Keyshawn Nixon, and this is a little bit of an interesting one. Couple huge plays, and this is just defense. This does not include special teams where he, down the ball at the 1-yard line, but the forced fumble was a massive play in the game. and the pass breakup in the end zone where he, so many corners in that situation are, have the tendency to grab or pull or, get a pass interference in that situation. Nixon goes up, plays the ball, knocks it away. Really key play in the end zone on that, on that specific play as well. That said, as I watched this game in more detail, he was allowing some of the, a lot of the completions, some of them late in the game on that final drive, just allowing a little bit too much space on some of those plays. So, it's not an easy task to come into a game that you're probably not expected to play much, probably didn't get a lot of first team reps through the course of the week, and all of a sudden now you're in for Jair Alexander. That's big shoes to fill. I thought overall, how he stepped up in key moments was the difference here, and that's what got him the good grade. Still certainly some things to clean up, but this is a very positive performance overall from Keyshawn Nixon. And then number 3, Devondre Campbell, all over the place as a tackler. And then, of course, bats away the 2-point conversion at the end to seal the game. I don't think Campbell has been quite to the level he played at a season ago. I thought this was his best performance so far. Did miss a tackle again, had a couple completions on him in coverage, but overall, really solid performance. Clark was a plus 1.3, Nixon plus 0.55, and Campbell plus 0.45. My bottom 3 on defense, number 1, Preston Smith, negative 0.95. Really liked his first 2 games. Didn't like this one as much. Speaking of accident forgiveness, he went up against, he got the short end of the stick. Rashawn Gary got to go against the 3rd string left tackle. Preston Smith got to go against Tristan Wirfs for the vast majority of the game. Now, Smith did get some time on the right side to go against the backup left tackle as well. I didn't think he made the most of it like I would have liked to have seen, but a lot of his poor grade is chalked up to going against who I think is the best right tackle in football and probably a top 4 to 5 overall tackle in football in Tristan Wirfs. Wirfs was just phenomenal in this game. It didn't matter if it was Preston Smith, Kingsley Enagbare, Rashawn Gary. Basically Wirfs was on cruise control, and a lot of Preston Smith's negative grade was certainly from a tough day at the office against one of the absolute best in the business. So sort of a hang with him for Preston. He's going to be just fine, but got a big dose of Tristan Wirfs, like I said, best right tackle in football. Jonathan Garvin, you guys know me well enough. I like to be as positive as possible. As I've mentioned, even negative grades today, I've said on numerous occasions, there's accident forgiveness in a lot of these situations. I told you my grades aren't the be-all, end-all, but I don't know what is going on. And not only why Jonathan Garvin is getting snaps, I don't know why he has a roster spot. And I'm not trying to be rude, and I hope Jonathan Garvin proves me wrong. I hope by next week he's playing at an insane level and goes out and crushes it. Like, I'm cheering for the guy. I thought it was a fantastic 7th-round flyer at the end of the draft. As a rookie, I thought he had a couple really impressive flash plays where I'm like, okay, like there's something here where if this guy could, just develop a little bit, he could maybe turn into a nice rotational edge rusher. He was brutal a season ago. He's been brutal in all 3 games this year. And so listen, sometimes players turn it around at different points, and I'm hoping that's the case for Garvin, but like Tipa hasn't gotten a snap on defense yet. Like, let's try something different. Enagbare is far and away ahead of Jonathan Garvin right now. And if Garvin's on the field and Enagbare isn't, that is a major mistake. It's not good enough. And he's not a special teams expert. He's not a good run defender. He's not a good pass rusher. I simply just don't get it. Like I said, I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he goes out and kills it and becomes a really great Green Bay Packer. But right now, it is a massive struggle. And quite frankly, I struggle to think that there's very, if any players in the league right now that are playing much worse of a brand of football than Jonathan Garvin is. And I know that sounds harsh, but I just haven't seen anything in 3 games that would remotely give any indication that he's ready to be a contributor on this team. Yet somehow he's basically been edge 3. He got demoted to edge 4 in this game. Enagbare got more snaps than him, but still, let's try Kobe Jones. Let's try Tipa Nalia. Let's try something else, because this right now with Jonathan Garvin is not working. And then number 3, TJ Slayton, negative 0.35. Made a couple plays inside, held up at the point of attack on a couple occasions, but also got washed out of the play. Just needs to play with a little bit better balance, a little bit better pad level. I think there's still something to TJ Slayton, but hasn't been quite what I think we were hoping for through 3 games so far. Not a brutal grade here, but as a rotational player, you just want to see those guys kind of get closer to even because they're not playing a ton of snaps. Slayton a negative 0.35 in minimum snaps is not a great performance. And again, I think there's just some things ultimately to clean up there for a player who has great size, great athleticism, great strength. He's just still working to put it all together. All right, some interesting ones. Romeo Dobbs, clearly 8 catch performance, right? This was clearly going to be a really strong grade for him. I had him at an even grade, a pure even grade. No positive, no negative. And maybe that sounds a little bit harsh, but if you go and watch his snaps on the plays where he's not targeted, he got taken out by press coverage on numerous occasions and didn't even get close to separating from the corner. So that's something he still has to work on. He's also still a very poor blocker in the run game. So he just has some things to work on. This is where there's nuance to this, right? I personally am insanely excited about Romeo Dobbs' performance in this game because you can see the talent he possesses. And in his 3rd game as a rookie, if he's doing that in his 3rd game as a rookie against a really stout Tampa Bay defensive backfield, like the sky is going to be the limit moving forward. The grade demonstrates there's still things to work on, including releasing from press coverage and blocking in the run game. And he'll get better at those things, but overall a even grade for him. Josh Myers and Ben Fennell pointed this out on Twitter as well, and he posted a couple clips if you have the opportunity to go out and look. There are points in the game where you put Josh Myers out on film, and you're just like, man, this guy's probably got to be one of the best centers in football. Like he had a ridiculous play against Vita Vea where he had a reach block and got around and set the edge, was able to seal him, I should say, so that the running back could get around the edge. Like just a beautiful, beautiful football play. You see him moving in space and taking on linebackers. Like he can move those linebackers off the screen when he wants to. There are some really wild plays from him. And then there's other plays where he just gets beat up, doesn't get any movement, and you're just like, what is going on here? And one of the things I did point out is that he hasn't played 10 games yet. Like he is still very early in his career. The flashes are there, but right now so are the inconsistencies. He had a negative 0.3 grade in this game for me. I love some of the stuff that I see. I really get, it's really disappointing to see some of the inconsistencies though at the same time. So I think he's going to get there, but still just needs to play a full, 60 minutes of football and put the same effort, energy, and skill on film all throughout the game. That's what makes David Bakhtiari so great, is that he's got a process that's repeatable. He can do it over and over again. Josh Myers is still working to get to that point. Devontae Wyatt, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful pass rush late in this game over the center. Just kind of like a grab and rip, move where he gets separation, is able to loop inside on Brady. Didn't get there. Brady, of course, per usual, gets the ball out of his hands so incredibly fast, but just a beautiful move for Devontae Wyatt. That'll get him in the good graces and maybe gets him a few more snaps on defense. A plus 0.25 grade for Wyatt. And then Enigbare, I mentioned earlier, I really liked what I saw to Kingsley JJ Enigbare. He had a negative 0.1 grade. A lot of that's because of Tristan Wirfs as well. But I saw some really impressive stuff from Enigbare. He has got some tools in his toolbox that are going to be extremely valuable to him as he gains a little bit of functional strength and learns how to play in this league. He's already showing off some things that are some, veteran-esque moves. I am so excited about the potential of him long-term based on what I saw in this game. Slight negative grade, but this is again where nuance comes in. Really excited about the long-term potential from Kingsley Enigbare based off of what I saw in this game. Some of the penalties in this game, as I watched them, I didn't hate the delay of game as much. There, it's explained over and over. The clock hits 0. The ref looks up to confirm. By the time he gets down, if the ball is snapped, he's not going to call it. If his head gets down and the ball still isn't snapped, he's going to call it. I think this is well within that extra tick, and I didn't hate that play. However, Kenny Clark very much extremely held, and so Clark bulldozed the center and got over him and was ready to get to Brady, and the center just grabbed at his collar and just pulled him to the ground. 2 refs looking right at it, no call on the play. The play before that, Russell Gage jumps off sides at wide receiver, or false starts I should say, no call on that play. Those are some things that I would have liked to seen a little bit better. And then obviously the running into the punter. I don't need a holding call there on Tampa's punt team. it's very unlikely that you get that call, especially to result in a safety. I think if that play happens 100 times, I don't think any ref crew is probably calling that a hold and a safety, but you can't call it a running into the punter. And Green Bay would have got the ball at the 33-yard line, 1st and 10, already in field goal range. That was a game-changing penalty. So certainly some things that the refs missed in this one, but you got to play through it. And a lot of times in the past, and as Kenny Clark mentioned, they haven't won those games in the past where you start getting adversity. You've got the fumble at the 1-yard line. You've got every call going against you and those sort of things. Green Bay toughed through. They got the win. I thought this was a really great character victory overall. Overall, offense graded as a -1.2, defense graded as a +1.75. Give Tampa Bay a lot of credit too. Level of competition was very tough in this game, and I think it was, it showed in the grades. Like Tristan Wirfs, just a phenomenal example of that. Dude's an absolute stud. Good luck going against him. I don't care what player you are. That's going to do it for me. Those are all my grades. You'll find the whole list of grades today on PackerReport.com. They should be up by end of day, usually in the afternoon, so make sure to check those out. Again, PackerReport.com. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. Also, you can catch Ross Uglum, Justice Mosqueda, and myself on Pack-A-Day Live, 7 p.m. today, Tuesday, Central Standard Time on YouTube, so make sure not to miss that live show as well. Super excited and really looking forward to talking to Ross and Justice on this week's episode. I will see you guys tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.